My dear ones, have you ever felt like life throws responsibilities that are just too big for your small shoulders? Have you ever had to be strong when all you really wanted was a safe place to rest? Today, we're going to hear the story of Emily, a young woman who, even while carrying the weight of the world, found strength where no one expected it, in the love for her sister, the courage to start over, and a hidden talent that ended up saving more than she ever imagined. And if you haven't joined Grandma's channel yet, now's the perfect time to become part of our family. Every week, I bring you stories that touch the soul, inspire the heart, and remind us how capable we truly are, even on the hardest days. Now it's your turn, Emily.
It was a chilly night, and the streets of Seattle were slick from the rain that had recently ceased. The glow of the streetlights reflected in the puddles like scattered stars on the asphalt. The silence felt heavier than usual, and there I was behind the wheel of an old car, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. In the back seat, Grace, my little sister, barely 10 years old, slept soundly, lulled by the engine's gentle hum. She was bundled in her blue blanket adorned with tiny stars, the one Grandma had sewn when she was little. Just looking at her made my heart ache. She was everything to me, and at that moment the weight of it all was almost unbearable. That night I was taking Grace to her physical therapy session. Alone. For the first time. It wasn't just about grabbing the car and driving to the rehabilitation center. It was about finally embracing responsibility. It was about not failing her. It was about being an adult, even when everything inside me was still screaming for help. "You can do this, Emily," I whispered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. It wasn't the first time I'd repeated that phrase to myself, but it was the first time I truly hoped to believe it. We arrived at the center a few minutes before our appointment. The building was illuminated by a soft, amber light spilling from the windows. I parked carefully and turned off the engine. I grabbed my bag, Grace's snack, and took a deep breath before opening the door. Inside, the atmosphere was calm, almost hushed. The distant sound of instrumental music played softly, attempting to be comforting. A nurse with a kind face greeted us with a smile. "Good evening, Emily. You're early today." "I wanted to beat the traffic," I replied, though I knew the real reason was the fear of arriving late and flustered. I accompanied Grace to the physical therapy room. She was still drowsy but looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes as if to say, "You're here. Everything will be all right." I sat in a corner of the room as the therapist began the session. I watched my sister's every move, the effort, the strength she put into each small gesture. She tried to lift her left arm, her muscles trembling, but with a determined expression. It tore me apart. I wished she never had to go through any of this. But at the same time, she was teaching me more about courage than any book or lecture ever could. As I watched her, my thoughts drifted for a few seconds. I thought of Grandma Eleanor at home waiting for news. I thought of my parents' absence, how much things had changed since they were gone. I thought of how at 24, I had become a mother, sister, protector, driver, cook, all at once. And above all, still trying to just be Emily. But then a sound cut through it all. A sharp crack, like breaking glass. I lifted my head. Then another sound like a door slamming shut. And then a scream. Loud. Piercing. A shiver ran down my spine. The nurse heard it too. She stood up, looking toward the hallway. "What was that?" she murmured. My instinct was immediate. I looked at Grace, who had stopped her exercise and was staring at me, frightened. "Stay with her," I told the nurse firmly. And without a second thought, I left the room and followed the sound. I didn't know what I was going to find, but I knew I couldn't just stand there. Have you ever felt your body move before your mind could comprehend what was happening? My footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor. The lights flickered, casting shadows on the walls. The smell, that was the first thing that assaulted me. Smoke. Pungent. Dense. Suffocating. I rounded the corner and saw the open doorway of one of the apartments on the floor. Dr. Carter's apartment, Grace's physical therapist. An orange glow pulsed from within as if hell itself was lurking there. Smoke billowed through the gap like desperate hands reaching for help. And then I heard it again. A scream. But it wasn't just any scream. It was a woman's voice tearing through the air. "My baby. My son is in there. Please, somebody help me." My heart stopped for a second. The woman was kneeling in the hallway, her face smudged with soot and desperation. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto mine as if I were her last hope. "He's in the crib. I can't get in. The flames, please." The nurse with me hesitated, and I just reacted. "Come on," I said, pulling her by the hand. We went inside. The smoke hit me like a blow. I coughed, trying to cover my mouth with the sleeve of my coat. The nurse wet a handkerchief with water from a nearby drinking fountain and handed it to me. I held it to my face, feeling the heat intensify with every step. The apartment seemed like a labyrinth of shadows. Flames began to lick at the living room curtains. The ceiling crackled. Everything was happening too fast, and yet, in slow motion. We followed the crying. It was faint but persistent. A small sound but desperate. We entered a room partially consumed by flames. In the corner, a white crib, and inside a baby, no more than a year old, crying, arms outstretched as if begging to be held. I ran. I didn't think about the heat. I didn't think about the pain in my legs. I only remember scooping that baby into my arms. He was trembling, covered in sweat and smoke, but alive. Thank God, alive. "I've got him," I yelled. "Let's get out of here." The nurse held the door open. The heat was unbearable. Flames were already in the corridor. I ran like I'd never run before. And as we crossed the apartment doorway, I nearly fell to my knees. But there was no time. The fire alarm blared throughout the building. Screams echoed from the floors above. People rushed down the stairs. Chaos erupted. The baby's mother ran to me, grabbing her child with a cry of relief and sobs. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Thank you! You saved him! You saved my son!" My hands trembled. My eyes burned. My skin tingled with fear and adrenaline. But I was there. Alive. And so was he. And then I saw her. In the middle of the crowd, Grace. She had left the room, accompanied by another nurse. She was standing, her eyes wide, searching for me. When our eyes met, she ran. I knelt, even with my shaky legs, and hugged her tightly. "Are you okay?" She whispered in my ear, her voice choked. I nodded, holding her close. "I am. And you too." Behind us, sirens grew closer. Ambulances. Fire trucks. The sound of emergency. The sound of life continuing, even after the scare. I looked at the building. It was still shaking. But inside me, one thing was clear. I had faced the fire. And I didn't burn. Have you ever felt as though the world expected you to be strong, even when everything within you just wanted to fall apart? After that night at the rehab center, life seemed to shift in tone. It wasn't a sudden change like the crack of lightning. It was gradual, like when you realize the sky has already darkened, and you hadn't even noticed the sun slipping away. The morning after the fire, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red from rubbing them. The skin around my nose was smudged with soot. But something inside had ignited. Something I couldn't yet name. Grace was still asleep. She was exhausted. And Grandma Eleanor welcomed us with that kindness only she could muster. Hot tea, blankets, a comforting silence. She didn't ask many questions. She just looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing." But was I doing the right thing for us? That was a question that had been plaguing me for months. Ever since our parents passed away, I'd been trying to keep everything in balance. Grace, the house, the internship, Grandma, my own dreams. I couldn't even recall what they looked like anymore. That night, while the house slept, I sat on the sofa with my old laptop on my lap. I opened a cybersecurity course I'd saved months before, but had never had the courage to start. The title of the first lesson was, "What motivates you?" I smiled to myself. In that moment, the answer was obvious. Grace. It was for her that I needed to carry on. But for the first time in a long time, it was also for me. I started studying. 1, 2, 3 hours a night. Sometimes sleep would overcome me over the keyboard. Other times, silence kept me company. The truth is, coding gave me a kind of control I didn't feel in the rest of my life. The code was logical, coherent, and above all, it obeyed me. The following week, Daniel Mitchell, the CEO of the company where I was doing administrative work, called me in for a chat. "Emily," he said, sitting across from his sleek glass desk, "I heard about what happened at the center. You were incredibly brave. But it's not just that. We've been observing your contributions to the company's internal system. You have talent. Talent? I repeated, surprised. Yes. I saw your security scripts, your analyses. You think like an IT person, and that's rare. Especially coming from someone who isn't even in the field yet. I felt my heart beat faster. I know your life isn't simple, but if you're willing, we'd like to offer you a position on our innovation team, with flexible hours, and with the potential for growth. I swallowed hard. My thoughts immediately flew to Grace. I'd only have one condition, I said, that I can bring my sister with me from time to time. She has rehabilitation sessions, and I can't leave her alone. He smiled, without hesitation. Family first. Always. And that's how it all began. That evening I told Grace. Are you going to work with computers? She asked, a sparkle in her eyes. I'm going to try, I replied, smiling. And you'll come with me whenever you need to. She hugged me, tightly, in that special way only she knew how. In that moment I realized something simple, yet profound. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And in that silence, something within me bloomed. Have you ever witnessed someone blossom right before your eyes, and realized you were blossoming alongside them? That's exactly what happened to Grace and me. After I started working in technology at Daniel's company, my life found a new rhythm. Hectic, yes. Intense, undoubtedly. But for the first time, I felt like I was moving towards something of my own. I was building even when exhausted. And I wasn't alone. Grace would join me on some afternoons when she didn't have classes or sessions. The entire team welcomed her so warmly that she began to feel like a part of that world. She'd walk the corridors with a little notebook in hand, observing every detail. But what no one knew was that she drew everything. Secretly. One day, arriving home early, I found Grace on the sofa with her notebook open on her lap. She was drawing the company building. Every window, every plant in the lobby, even people's ID badges. I approached slowly. Did you do all this from memory? I asked. She smiled a little shyly. More or less. I also invented a garden at the entrance. I sat beside her. You have talent, Grace. You know that, right? She shrugged. It's just a hobby. It's more than that. You have a unique perspective. Want to try drawing on the computer? She hesitated. I don't know if I can do it. We'll find out together. The following week, I retrieved an old company laptop, installed a free digital art program, and we transformed a corner of my room into Grace's studio. First, she was reluctant, but gradually she started to get the hang of it. The mouse became a brush. The screen became a true canvas, and the drawings began to come alive. First, there were magical gardens, then characters with enormous eyes and intricately detailed clothing. And then came the stories. She started creating scenes, little comic strips, characters with dreams and fears similar to her own. One evening she called me over. Look at this one, she said, pointing to the screen. It was a girl in a wheelchair in the middle of an enchanted forest. Around her, magical creatures protected her. At the top of the screen, a phrase. Even without wings, she flew. I couldn't hold back my tears. Do you think anyone would like this? She asked. I'm absolutely certain they will. With the support of a colleague from the company's marketing department, we helped Grace put together a small online portfolio. Using a pseudonym, she began posting her drawings. Nothing major, just one post a week. But something unexpected happened. People began to comment, to share, to follow. An art teacher wrote, "This drawing moved me." A mother commented, "My daughter feels this way too. Thank you for this work." A student said, "You inspired me to start drawing again." Grace was speechless. So was I. The following week, Daniel passed by our room with a subtle smile. "I hear we have an artist on the team," he joked, looking at Grace. She blushed crimson. "I saw your drawings," he continued. "You're extraordinary." "Thank you," she whispered. And suddenly there we were. Me, the sister who just wanted to manage everything. Her, the girl who just wanted to tell her stories in silence. And together we watched a new world unfold. But it was in this calm that something unexpected arose. Daniel called me for a private conversation. "Emily," he said, "the company is opening a new branch in Toronto, a project focused on digital security, led by women. I want you to head it up." I fell silent. Moving cities? Countries? I trust you, but it's a decision only you can make. That night, I sat beside Grace. What if we started over? Somewhere else, with new possibilities? She was silent for a few seconds, and then she smiled. "Shall we fly?" When we got off the plane in Toronto, it was January. The cold cut like glass, and our coats seemed inadequate. But Grace looked out the taxi window with a serene smile on her face. It was as if, despite the new and the unknown, she knew this place had something to offer us. Our new apartment was small but cozy, a room for each of us, a cramped kitchen, and a corner that soon became Grace's new studio. I set up my workstation on the other side of the room. It was all makeshift, but it was ours. On our first day at the company's new branch, I was greeted with flowers, coffee, and sincere hugs. The team was diverse, motivated, and open to new ideas. I led a group of brilliant women, each with her own story, her own baggage, her own pains, and her own dreams. For the first time, I felt I didn't have to prove I belonged. I belonged. Grace also began to adapt. She continued to post her drawings online, now with more confidence. She received messages from other young artists, invitations to participate in forums, live sessions, and even an email from a virtual gallery interested in exhibiting her illustrations. One day,